In the opening of manhwa we can see a troupe is going with a carriage. The carriage look lavish. Inside the carriage there is a beautiful woman. The woman, she is Princess Adelaide Gotrov of Gotrov Empire. She is a powerful mage who can single-handed defeat Monster Tower. She is thinking about her encounter with her mother before she is going out from her empire. Her mother said go and become the Empress of Ichmont. Princess replied that her mother looked anxious to tolerate her presence there. Her mother said she thought that will accept this proposal. She is wrong. Princess isn't distress. Princess mother whisper in her ears that does she not regret that day every single time that day if she had left her little brother to die then she could become an emperor. Princess flinch and please stop it mother. Her mother said does not princess think that she owned one and only her little brother. Mother said of course she is loyal to him. It shows her mother clearly don't like her and favors hide little brother. Her mother said her existence to the empire you just like a knife on a jaw for the sheikh of empire and her little brother she should leave this empire and can go become Empress of another empire. Scene shift now princess is watching a photo in name of her future husband. His name is Karl Ulrich Ichmont of Ichmont Empire. She noticed a paper lying on the floor. On that paper is written the emperor has already a mistress. Her name is Diana Poitiers and she is 29-year-old. This information princess doesn't know. No princess is thinking then she can only reach to the continent and leave her homeland after crossing deep and rough ocean. She can't return to her homeland and where she is going there is no trust. The land is very far and she has to become the empress of another empire. In Palace Emperor Karl Ulrich Ichmont of Ichmont Empire, he is watching princess portrait before her arrival. His thinking.
When someone send their prospective groom their photo, they usually draw themselves sitting calmly with gentle smile on their face, right? But she is sending him the message that she will come as an empress, not my woman. I can clearly feel her influence from this portrait. It's a pity. It's better for both of us if she were to come as a woman.
After a month later princess arrived to empire. Lionel Valgier, the second son of Duke Valgier. He is the Minister of Ministry of Defense and Captain of Royal Guard. He and his guards saw princess carriages coming.
There, I think they're almost here.
Yes, I saw them. Let's prepare to department.
How long will it be before we arrive?
The gate we are seeing right now is the first gate. Since we need to pass through the second gate, it will take another before we arrive, Your Highness.
Princess think seems like I have to change clothes. Lionel arrived. He introduced himself. I am Minister of Ministry of Defense and Captain of Royal Guards and I am here to escort Her Highness. Princess Aide opened the door. As soon as door is opened the minister is surprised to see the princess. She is in wearing her gown. She is wearing horse riding clothes. He saw her golden eyes and felt enchanted to it. He thought they are such rare ones. He escort her out of her carriage. Princess said you went out of your way to welcome me. Thank you. My name is Adelaide Gotrov. For a moment he is mesmerized by her presence and stopped for a moment. Princess said it's quite strenuous to ride a carriage in a boat for a 2 whole month. Do you perhaps have any sphere horse? Lionel, are you asking a horse? Princess, so the first can ride it. Lionel thinking a horse riding, that's why she changed her clothes, causes it strange for noble women to wear such clothes at first meeting. Your Highness, the war horses are fierce so it would be dangerous, soldier said. Princess said how dare you harbor such a concern for a princess of Gotrov. Princess took that dangerous horse and rider it with her full confidence. All soldiers and Lionel is stunned and thinks God heaven that's why she was very confident about it. She has excellent horse riding skills. Princess praised the horse, good job. Lionel, Your Highness, do you feel relieved now, Your Highness? Princess reply, yes, thank you. All thought I would like to write some more. I guess it will be a bit troublesome if I were to arrive at palace wearing this. Lionel suggest Your Highness please ride in your carriage from here now. He thought otherwise it would be scandalous for Crown Princess to arrive at palace in such manner. You said your name is Lionel, was there right? Thank you. I could get over the boring journey. I hope we can go horse riding together someday. Princess thanks Lionel. Lionel flinched and thought Princess Adelaide of Gotrov Empire, such a unique person, is going to become Empress. Scene shifts in the palace. Emperor is working when his aide came and wants audience with him. Emperor asked what is wrong? Maid, my lady wants favor from you, Your Majesty. In Ivory Palace of Emperor Mistress is picking up some jewelry and crown. While picking up, Duchess Ulrich Grand arrived. She's the stepsister of the Emperor, and the only female member of the royal family of Ulrich. Mistress welcomed her and asked what's bring your grace here to Ivory Palace. Duchess asked what of this did His Majesty give you these? You think that you wouldn't even need permission to take out the royal treasurer. No, that's impossible, Mistress replied. I was just choosing the Empress crown for the marriage ceremony. Duchess Empress crown? Crown chosen, that's been chosen by personally Mistress. I am worried Gotroy's officials will floods with protest letters if they hear about this rather than a crown chosen by the Mistress. Isn't it better if it's chosen by the sister-in-law? Mistress laughed and said, I apologize. As the only divorced woman in the empire, I am not sure if you have the right to choose. As you may know, our empire forbids a divorced woman to host a wedding. Duchess shouted and said, this is insolent. Then suddenly Emperor arrived. He smashed the door aggressively, then shout, what's happening? The Mistress smirks and thinks the Emperor came just in time as she planned. She said in sad tone, Your Majesty, you have arrived. Somehow Emperor doesn't look pleased. Duchess thinks just now she was boldly cunning and now this fox changed in weak women. Emperor asks, what's happening? Duchess reply, are you looking for your mistress rather than managing state affairs? You won't believe it, but I haven't done anything. The Mistress starts shedding crocodile tears. Oh God, it's just beginning and she is on my nerves. Emperor asked they why she is just like this. Mistress said, it's all right, Your Majesty, Her Grace hasn't done anything wrong. It's all because I am lacking. Look like we have another trashta. Mistress said, I'm doing my best to prepare for Your Majesty's wedding, but Her Grace was not satisfied with the preparations. Duchess said, right, Tilda, so that's what happened. I have somehow become a mean sister-in-law who picks on an innocent person again. Seems like I have no right to say anything. Even though your cherished mistress is trying to show off her authority in pretense of preparing the wedding ceremony. Emperor in taunting tone said, show off her authority right now. We have no suitable royal lady who can host the wedding ceremony. Should not we instead be grateful to her for volunteering to do it herself? Especially you, Duchess Grant. Duchess is angry. Are you now blaming me for my divorce? Emperor, let's stop this. This is my last warning. I am the one who put Diana in charge of the wedding ceremony's preparations, so you have no say about this. Just follow her decisions, are we clear? Duchess is furious. She said, well, I too don't want to see this sight ever again. I will head back to my fief as soon as the ceremony is over. Emperor left the room. As soon as Emperor left, the pretty face of Mistress changed and she glanced at Duchess and she also left the room. Duchess flinch. She sit on the sofa, her head spin. She is thinking His Majesty the son of Empire. The closer are to him, the more light they'll receive. Even though she is His Majesty's older sister, she really can't think it will be alright if you upset him, causes his mistress is now only person Emperor matters. Duchess is shocked that how much she can manipulate the Emperor. This much I don't know if the new Empress will be able to hang on. Scene shift. The Emperor is lying on his mistress' lap instead of going in his office. His mistress said, Your Majesty, you have to go now, while stroking his hairs. Emperor, let me stay like this little bit more. His mistress thinks, ah, he's so beautiful. His forehead, eyelashes, nose, lips. There's not a single part of him I don't like. Karl Ulrich Eichmont, he is perfect like his name. While crying she is saying, this person is mine, I intention of sharing him with anyone else. Her teardrops drop on Emperor face. He quickly get up and saw her crying. He asked what happened. She said, forgive me, Your Majesty, while crying. He said, are you still hurt by Duchess Grant's words? No, it is not that. I was just thinking, what should I do if the Empress is displeased with me? Would it be better for me to leave the palace if that'd make Your Majesty more comfortable? Then Emperor said she didn't need to worry, Empress will not harm her. Mistress, I apologize, Your Majesty, I feel like I always stand in the way of your future. Well, of course you are. Mistress, however, Your Majesty, you're the only one I want in my life. Even if you were to take an Empress, I am fine with just being by your side. But she thinks something else. I will never let anyone steal you from me, even if it's the Empress. Scene shift. Now Mistress is in her room. Her brother is also present there. He said, you even chose His Majesty's coat. There's not much time left before the Emperor's wedding. You can control your emotions well. Mistress noticed, there is new maid. I have never seen you before. Lift your face. Light blonde hair, deep blue eyes, although she is not that noticeably beautiful. Both of you leave. Need to talk privately with my big brother. I told you not to allow anyone with blonde hair and blue eyes become a maid. Her brother said, do you even know how common people who have blonde hair and blue eyes are? If we exclude all of them, do you think we'll be able to pick a maid? Mistress, still, you have to do as I tell you. Do you understand? All right, okay. And be careful with your words in front of the maids. If you can't even do that, don't come looking for me in the future. Brother said anyway, let me ask you one thing, do you really think you can hang on the Empress is the Princess of Gotrov? What do you mean? I know His Majesty can't live without you, but even if he can, he still won't grant you the title of Empress. There's no way the Empress would let you, His Majesty's lover, off. She has to let people know her position in the palace. I've heard rumors say she is exceptionally beautiful. This is why I have always told you to get pregnant before his marriage so you. Mistress shouts on her brother. She said, do you think it's as easy as it sounds? The Empress would not be granted anything by His Majesty. His brother flinch and ask what? She replied that Emperor hate the word Empress. His brother asked, what are you talking about? Mistress replies, I am saying that the reason why His Majesty can't make me an Empress is because he loves me. Brother said, what kind of bullshit is that? You don't know men love can grow cold. Emperor love can become anytime cold to her. Mistress said she knows. Sure. Love for the living can become cold, however love for dead cannot grow old. His Majesty see his mother in her. Wait listeners, what the shit she is talking? His mother, who passed away prematurely due to the former Empress prosecution. That's why the word, Empress, itself is something he hates. Do you still think his love would ever grow cold after hearing that? Her is his little brother in shock. Rather than an Empress who only has her status, it's better to be a mistress who has both love and power in her hands. Scene shift. The day after Adelaide arrived at the royal palace, people lined up to welcome her. They wanted to leave a good impression on the person who would soon become their Empress. However, after the parade of greetings came to an end, when it became late in the evening, there were still no news of the Emperor. The servants are also shocked. Princess think in the end he would not came. She informed the servants, I am tired. I will take a warm bath and retire for the day. If anyone visits, send them back and tell them to come back tomorrow. After that she went to take a bath. When Princess came from bathroom, she saw someone is there in her room. Who is she? This is bedchamber. It's common courtesy for all visitors to be guided to the drawing room to wait there. So how is this woman, who is not the owner of this bedchamber, waiting here so brazenly? Greetings, Your Highness, my name is Diana Poitiers. Princess. Ah, Emperor. Mistress. Princess, ignore her. And instruct her maid, my clothes are all wet, hurry up and dry my hair. Her maid understood, Your Highness. Mistress is relieved. She thought her face isn't emperor type. Unintentionally Mistress smirks. Princess noticed that Mistress smirks. Mistress said, let me dry your hair, Your Highness. Are you a maid? No, I am not, Your Highness. Then why did you say you want to dry my hair? And moreover, if you're not a maid, why are you here in my bedchamber without my permission? I am sorry, Your Highness, if it displeases you, however I want to inform you of something, Your Highness. Princess, regarding what? Mistress, regarding His Majesty preference. Princess is kinda shocked. She is thinking what the hell she is talking about. What did she just say? Mistress said, I came here because I thought you would be curious about His Majesty's preferences. Your Highness, he likes wavy hairs. However, since you have straight hair, how about trying to roll your hair to make it wavy? And you look too pale, how about applying some makeup to make your cheeks more rosy? Princess is pissed off. She is now angry. She grabbed Mistress' hair by her hand and said, how dare she talk like that to her? In angry tone, Princess said, preference. You said preference. Then Princess leave her hair and ask her maiden to bring her wine. I heard that each month is famous for its homebrewed wine. I am curious. I will drink a glass and sleep soundly after that. Maid understood, Your Highness. Princess asked, why are you giving me that kind of advice that I didn't even ask for, and then being needlessly sincere about it? That's because, Mistress said, I am sure you'll be asking about His Majesty's preferences. That's why I gave you this inform. Princess in annoying tone said, are you, perhaps, the kind of person who enjoys going around telling people about another person's preferences? Then can you go and tell His Majesty about my preferences? I like a man who knows how to speak about private issues in person. Ah. And one more thing, not once in my life have I thought of changing to suit another person's preferences. That's why it is all right not to share the Emperor's preferences with me. Those preferences, just keep it to yourself. Now you can go. Still, Mistress has to say something. I think I made a mistake because I was too excited to meet you. Your Highness, please forgive me. Princess, well, you don't really need to apologize. Then I hope you'll have a comfortable rest. Please feel free to me if there's anything uncomfortable for you. I have instructed them to make no mistakes whilst obliging you. I will excuse myself now. Instructed Princess. Princess thinks Mistress words them to make no mistakes in obliging me. Isn't that what the house owner says to their visitors, to be greeted by the Emperor's mistress as soon as I arrive? It's ridiculous. Karl Ulrich Eichmont in angry tone. Day of the wedding, the emperor had never looked for a prospective bride all this time. This rumor has spread all over the palace like wildfire. Princess Adelaide said, "What a romantic emperor we have here, one that's deeply in love with this." He's saying that Diana Poitiers is the one responsible for all the palace's affairs. Right, and I am the stumbling block between them. While Princess was talking to herself, the maiden came and informed that this is the platinum crown you will be wearing for the ceremony. Your Highness, would you like to try it? Princess Adelaide tried the crown. She quickly realized Mistress Diana gave this crown her on purpose. Anyone can clearly see that crown doesn't suit her and her golden eyes. Princess Adelaide asked, "Is there a golden crown rather than a silver-colored crown? A golden crown would shit me more. I still have some time before the ceremony, so I would like to change the crown." Scene shifts. We can see that Mistress Diana is with Emperor Karl. She is shaking in front of him. Karl asks what happened. Mistress start cry and lean on Emperor Karl and said, "I am sorry, I am really sorry, Your Majesty." Meanwhile, Emperor Karl is thinking someone small and fragile, just like her, comes to mind. The one who made me want to protect her from being called Empress, and at the same time, makes me want to look away whenever the word Empress appears. It makes me feel sick. Diana said Her Majesty Princess is really noble and beautiful for her. It's no wonder that she thought that I was just one of the maids. Diana thinks the Emperor's biological mother was also the Empress, maid. Diana plans works and Emperor Karl is interested what happened to her. Karl said, "A maid, didn't you say that nothing happened on the day you went to greet her?" Diana said, "Nothing happens, it just Your Majesty. I was just a bit sad that I couldn't answer her when she asked me who I was charged. I'm fine with just being by your side, but it seems that I'm getting too greed." Then Diana pretend to faint and Emperor shout her name, "Diana, breath." Diana slowly breath. "Is there anyone outside? Hurry up and call for the physician. Hurry." Diana while crying, "You can't throw me away. Please don't throw me away, Your Majesty." Then scene shift to marriage place. Guests are whispering within them, why hasn't His Majesty shown without any notice no matter what's going on? Isn't this his own marriage ceremony? Is it possible that Lady Poitiers is stopping him from coming anyway? I feel pity for the bride standing there all by herself. Princess Adelaide thinks, damn it, did he plan to make her look ridiculous on purpose? Princess Adelaide thought, I have anyone to ask nor anyone who would tell me what's happening. I feel as if I'm being thrown into the enemy's territory fully unarmed. Princess Adelaide thought about her nanny words while she was leaving the country. Your Highness, please remember in that place you have no one to trust except yourself. Please keep in your mind that you are the only one who can protect your honor and dignity. Nanny, you have to get it together even more right now, Adelaide. Princess Adelaide called servant. You there, go and get me a chair. I'll have a seat until His Majesty comes. She thought all the nobles present are waiting while seated, so why should I stand? It just looks pathetic. All guests are curious and whispering, what do you think the future Empress is going to do? I have no idea. Why is a chair? It cannot be. A bride waiting for His Majesty remains seated. All guests are witnessing Princess Power move and whispering. Lionel elder brother said her aura is amazing. She flipped the situation to her favor so easily. Princess Adelaide and Lionel eyes meet. Princess, that person Lionel Valgier? They took a little glance at each other. Guests are mesmerized by her aura and beauty. Oh my god, she's so gorgeous you can't take your eyes off her. She made that chair regal in an instant. Duchess thought she made the nobles under control in just one move. She thought this is right time. Duchess, should we use this chance to go and greet Her Majesty? Greeting Your Majesty, my name is Elizabeth Ulrich Grand. I've always wanted to see you. August Ulrich, it is a personal honor to meet you. My name is August Ulrich Davenel. Princess replied, despite your polite introductions, I am not really sure how I should introduce myself. It would be great if the ceremony starts soon, so I would be able to confidently introduce myself to both of you. I'm Adelaide, someone who wants to hurry up and become an Ulrich. Duchess, you already look like this empire's empress now. August Ulrich, it will be completely fine to confidently say that you are an Ulrich each month. All guests agree with Duchess and August Ulrich's statement. That's right, Your Majesty. Princess, please be seated. Seems like we shall have to wait a little longer for His Majesty. Duchess thought of Princess' humble yet powerful aura. She's really exceptional. She just simply offered HS a seat, but with that, She showed who has the higher rank in this place. I am curious to see Karl's face if he were to see this sight. Then servant announced, all rise for His Majesty the Emperor. Emperor came in. He saw Princess Adelaide and shocked that she's seating. She's seated? Princess ordered the servant, you may remove the chair. Servant understood, Your Majesty the Empress. Emperor took a glance at Princess and thought she's, without a doubt to my surprise, the very embodiment of an empress. I wonder if that's why he feel more disgusted. Princess greetings. She thought this man is Emperor Karl Ulrich Eichmont, a graceful face. The portrait didn't do his beauty justice, but how come he looks so cold-hearted? He's the one who came late. I feel tired already. Servant, Your Majesty, this bouquet is to be held in your hands. Another servant, please walk down the aisle holding Her Majesty's hand. Your Majesty. Emperor glanced at Princess Adelaide, but the Emperor refused to hold the Empress' hand when walking down the aisle. Witnessing this Emperor rude behavior, uproar among the all-Nobel guests happen. Guests, oh my, what on earth? Princess shocked and tremble, but she collect herself and enclam herself. Servant, Your Majesty, the bouquet. Princess, it's not needed. Emperor walk 2 step forward from her bride. When they both came to aisle, Emperor said to Princess, don't get greedy, don't stop and keep walking. Princess confused and asked, what do you mean by that? Emperor, I heard you asked Diana Poitiers if she's a maid. Princess replied, of course I would question her since she was in someone's bedchamber without permission. Emperor, Diana Poitiers isn't a maid, so please don't make such a rude mistake ever again. In cold voice, I won't spend our first night with you, so don't wait for me. Priest voice, with that this couple shall follow God's will to each other and become a good example for many people. Princess glanced at Emperor and thought God's will is the Emperor's attitude of placing boundaries by saying I'm not his wife. As soon as we got married, written somewhere on God's will? Priest, I inform you in front of God, that from now on Adelaide Gottrov has become Adelaide Ulrich Eichmont. Princess is devastated and thought, damn it, I've now passed the point of no return. In the previous chapter, the Emperor embarrassed our main heroine during the wedding ceremony. Now, in the Ivory Palace, Diane was looking out the window at the Empress Palace. Is the ceremony over? She asked. Yes, a maid replied. Diane was relieved. Can you eat something now? You've skipped meals for several days already. A maid asked, trying to get Diane to eat something. Diane's face contorted at the question. She frowned and looked back at the maid, and at her sharp gaze, the maid shrank back. Another maid said, what are you talking about? Do you think she has been intentionally skipping her meals? Purple maid hesitantly replied, no, I don't mean that. Maid said, she was unable to eat, do you understand? Purple hair maid, seeing the scowl on Diane's face, she quickly apologized, not realizing the mistake she had made. Please forgive me, she said. As the two women faced each other in silence, Diane's gaze was enough to make the maid quiver in fear. Diane had already erupted in anger, berating the maid for her ignorance and lack of respect. The maid apologized and begged for forgiveness, but Diane remained stern, making it clear that she expected to be treated with proper respect as the owner of the palace. Diane glared at the maids for a moment, then spoke with a cold tone. The kneeling lady-in-waiting and held her chin, causing the maid to fill with fear. Does this look like a common aristocratic mansion? Do you think I'm a common person? Diane asked, her tone dripping with disdain. The maid didn't respond, too terrified to speak. Diane gently stroked the lady-in-waiting's hair and said, now, this is the imperial palace, right? Yes, lady, the maid responded. I am the owner of this palace. How dare you say, lady? Diane bellowed, violently pulling the maid's hair. The maid screamed in surprise and begged for forgiveness as Diane stared blankly at her. Diane brushed her hands off and stood up, causing the lady-in-waiting to collapse on the floor. There should be a division between upper and lower. I am the owner of this ivory palace. That's why you call me, Your Highness. Got it? Diane said sternly. Yes, Your Highness. Mistress, this place is full of only slow-witted people like her. It's troublesome. Yes, exactly, the slow-witted is you. Mistress, I shall lie down on the bed for a while. I feel faint since I haven't eaten at all these days. Another maid glanced at the mistress and replied, Your Highness, should I call a physician on standby? Mistress, all right, you may do that. Adele locked herself in her room and began to contemplate her situation. How many individuals can I trust? She couldn't trust anyone. Even the maids in the palace seemed untrustworthy. On the first day of her marriage, the ladies-in-waiting had not seemed surprised that the emperor had not shown up, as if they had already known he wouldn't be coming. Adele had no information on her new husband, Karl Ulrich Emont, as the two countries of Gottrov and Emont had not interacted with each other for a long time because the deep and turbulent sea separated the two countries. There was no reason to cross the ocean and target each other's territory, so the two nations did not go beyond recognizing each other's existence. Adele felt a heavy weight on her chest whenever she thought about the emperor, who was now officially her husband. Expect too much. Adele clenched her fists and ground her teeth in response to the thought. Adele's foreboding turned out to be accurate as limit to embarrassing anyone. Don't tell me on our wedding night, he brazenly went to his mistress. Scene shifts to Ivory Palace. Emperor came to Ivory Palace instead of Empress Palace. Emperor, is she asleep? Yes, Your Majesty. Karl entered Diane's bedroom with a frown, finding her lying on the bed, pale and sweating. His own eyes were sunken as if he had been through a lot of stress. He inhaled deeply as he heard a faint voice calling out to him. Karl, son. He saw a massive bed with blonde hair on the pillows and a pale complexion. Diane looked as though she was about to break out in a cold sweat, her hands drenched with sweat. Your Majesty? Diane's faint voice brought Karl back to reality. That he was still wearing the same wedding dress made Diane purse her lips, as though she was stopping herself from smiling. She assumed that since he saw her collapse, the wedding must have been a complete disaster. Are you okay? Karl asked. Diane nodded slowly and spoke to Karl in a condescending tone. Did you arrive immediately after the wedding? Then, what shall we do, Your Majesty? Stop. I'm very sorry. It always irritates me. Diane hardly rose from her bed. You should go, the Empress will be waiting for you. I said I wouldn't go. Diane pursed her lips and sobbed at these words. I chose the wedding dress of the Empress, Your Majesty. I also selected the ceremonial crown for Her Majesty, she said, unaware that Adele had changed to a gold crown. As I selected all of the ceremony necessities and flowers, it felt as though my heart was being torn apart. Diane stood in front of the Emperor, tears streaming down her face as she tried to stifle the tumultuous emotions roiling inside her. As she cried, the Emperor watched her, his expression one of concern but not agitation. After a long period of sobbing, Diane's tears finally began to subside. She stood there, staring at the Emperor's face, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. The few remaining tears evaporated without a trace. Nothing will differ from the past. May I remain by the side, Your Majesty? Diane asked, begging sincerely while holding his sleeve with a pitiful. Yes. But whom should I present to Her Majesty? Because she is the Empress, nobles will refer to me as her concubine. It seems that Diane is concerned about her status in the palace and how she will be perceived by others, particularly the Empress and the nobles. A ripple appeared on the Emperor's previously calm face as he tilted his head and inquired, Do you have a title in mind? Lover, Diane responded, her heart racing wildly. She was short of breath and even began to perspire. Please inform the Empress that I am your lover. The Emperor stared at Diane for a long time with a confused expression, as if he did not know what she was thinking. And after some time, he responded with an odd tone, I understand. When Diane's request was granted, she appeared astounded. A wolf cannot be tamed, but it can be provoked by touching its weak spot. Emperor Karl was a wolf-like man who concealed a raging fire. And Diane was aware of his vulnerabilities. She extended her hand to the Emperor and he grasped it. She reclined on her bed and shifted slightly to one side. "Please embrace me," Diane said with a longing expression. Karl hesitated for a moment before finally yielding to Diane's silent request. And climbed onto the bed, pulling Diane into his arms. A smile played across her lips as she finally achieved her goal of spending the night with the Emperor. "If I cannot become the Empress, no one else can assume that role in its entirety." Every scene of both of these foolish is trying not to cringe challenge. The day after the wedding of the imperial couple, rumors spread like wildfire in a dry bush. Oh! As soon as the ceremony concluded, His Majesty departed for the Ivory Palace. So the Empress' wedding day was complicated? Yes. His Majesty arrived late to the wedding, correct? This is the first time this has ever occurred. How is Her Majesty doing? Yesterday, she announced that she would not receive any visitors. However, that did not save face. Can she assume authority over the imperial palace? As the noble ladies chattered in small groups, one of them suddenly grabbed the arm of the one who was gossiping. "Shish!" the other woman hissed, looking around nervously and shaking her head slightly. The group fell silent, all of them looking around in surprise. One of the women bit her lower lip in shock as she saw the Empress strolling leisurely through the adjacent corridor. The noble ladies quickly greeted the Empress with polite bows and curtsies, and Adele received their greetings with grace before continuing on her way. The ladies watched her retreating back with trembling hands held tightly to their chests. "Did she listen?" one of the noble ladies asked, looking back at the Empress' retreating figure with a worried expression. The other women narrowed their eyes and tried to gauge the Empress' reaction to their conversation. However, all they could focus on were her golden eyes that seemed to capture their attention immediately. She did not express displeasure. Therefore, she must not have heard, one of the women concluded after a moment of hesitation. Adele returned to the Empress Palace, her body feeling the strain of yesterday's ominous forecast. Despite the chill in the wind and the sun's heat, she maintained a composed facade, only allowing herself to take deep breaths in the privacy of her empty room. Standing alone for a long time, Adele's face contorted as she buried her hands in her face, overwhelmed by the disparity between her expectations and the reality of the situation despite being well prepared for this journey. Nobody from each month's native country was brought here for any reason other than the Emperor's request, and Adele knew that all of these factors were significant to Gotrov. They had no reason to embark on this journey of exile, but Adele couldn't let herself be consumed by the past. "You are intelligent, so as long as you are prudent, you will be fine." These were her mother's final words. Adele grinned self-deprecatingly as she remembered the voice. In the wedding traditions of each month, there is also a banquet. Due to the tradition of maintaining silence on the wedding day and the following day, a large banquet was held on the afternoon of the third day. On this day, the Emperor and his wife held their wedding banquet, and the entire palace was filled with revelry. Diane Poitiers had been working on the banquet since early morning, as it was an extension of the wedding. As she surveyed the exquisitely decorated main hall, "Your Highness, is there an alternative solution?" a lady's maid asked Diane politely. "No," Diane replied, shaking her head. The ladies in waiting exchanged sharp glances and briefly distanced themselves from Diane. Diane focused on the Empress chair, a luxurious red carpet seat where one could sit alongside the Emperor and look down on everyone. Diane had worked hard to rise from the rank of Countess's daughter to the position of the Emperor's favorite. She had lost her parents to the witch beasts that poured out of the tower, but she had persevered and earned the Emperor's love and even the Ivory Palace. This was the domain of the Emperor, and everything in it was imperial property. Only one person could sit beside the Emperor as his equal, his wife, the Empress. But a person who was born a princess and automatically assumed her position should not be placed above her. Today, the Empress shall not be able to sit comfortably in that chair. Weddings, first nights, and inaugural banquets, none of the main characters shall be the Empress. Should never be above me. The Empress will never be able to sit on that chair today. Damn, I bet. Even Sigmund Freud can't cure this women's delusion. While cushioning the flower, the mistress thought, the wedding ceremony, the first night, the first banquet, the main character of those events is her, not the Empress. That place, Emperor Sides, was meant for her from the start. All right, take it off, Adelaide commanded the maids. As the dress was removed, one of the maids spoke up. I sincerely apologize, Your Majesty. Adelaide leaned back in her chair and swept her hair up. Repair it in accordance with my measurements. I'll be waiting. The maids hesitated, but by the time the banquet arrives, it makes no difference if I arrive late. Get it repaired, Adelaide replied firmly. The maids looked at each other, unsure if they could carry out her commands. I sincerely apologize, Your Majesty. Small repairs on large clothes are simple, but large repairs on small clothes are difficult. The start of the banquet will not be a problem, but it will undoubtedly be later than the end time, one of the maids explained. Mother's words echoed in her mind as she grappled with the conundrum before her. Adele, do you believe your battles in the palace are insignificant? You are a general who has never stopped fighting. Don't let yourself go in Emont. For a moment, she remained silent. The dress before her, though beautiful, was not suitable for her wedding reception. It was not possible to dress in the Gotrov style for such an occasion. Well, that leaves me with only two options, Adele said as the maids waited attentively for her next command. I will not attend my wedding banquet, or I will not force myself to wear this ill-fitting dress. Is that understood? The maids lowered their heads, unable to respond to Adele's cold words. She straightened her back. Diane Poitiers plan my wedding? The maids hesitated before nodding in affirmation. The Emperor granted permission, one of them offered. Adele could not help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. The maids looked embarrassed and afraid, but Adele paid them no mind. All she could focus on was the absurdity of it all. Bring me the wedding gown and gold crown I wore, Adele commanded. I don't mind, Adele said firmly. Adele's thoughts were clear. She would not be blamed for her desire to gain advantage through a dress over an emperor's love. How would you like to know the Witch of Gotrov? Adele muttered, her eyes dark and menacing. The Ichmont Palace was alive with activity as the grand banquet in honor of the emperor's marriage began in the evening. Meanwhile, Diane and the Duke greeted guests throughout the banquet hall. Diane flattered. The Duke assisted greatly in decorating this banquet hall. It would not have been possible without our princess's eyes. Ha! Ha! The Duke laughed, praising Diane as a princess, and the other nobles laughed along. Whoa, my goodness! Isn't this a new atelier piece? One of the ladies exclaimed as she pointed to Diane's necklace with a surprised expression. The other ladies rushed to praise her jewelry. Oh, my God! I've heard these new products are stunning. I went to see them, but I was disappointed to learn that the princess had bought everything, one of them said. Oh my, these earrings are also part of a set, another added. The noblewomen all praised Diane, admiring the subtlety of her jewelry choices. But one of them couldn't help but ask with curiosity, oh, and I heard Your Majesty was still at the Ivory Palace on the first night of his marriage. Another chimed in, saying, I also heard it. That's one of a kind of love, princess. I envy you. Diane feigned a pitiful voice and said, please don't say anything like that. I'm afraid Her Majesty might misinterpret. The noblewomen continued to praise and chat with Lady Diane, not because they wanted to know her better, but to curry her favor. My lord, our estate's yield is not the same as in previous years. Would it be possible to consider a tax cut? A tower has recently collapsed near our estate, princess. Could you perhaps show leniency towards the strikers? Orphaned ladies had been sweating profusely in front of Diane since birth, offering compliments, making eye contact, laughing and inquiring. Diane smiled softly and nodded her head gently. "I'll make certain to inform your majesty," she said. "Thank you, my lord. Our princess is so modest. The emperor still delegated his authority over the palace administration to you." "Well, isn't this more than the queen's authority? You make risky remarks on the spur of the moment," a low voice interrupted Lennox's speech. Lennox turned his head. Standing before them was a handsome man with a cold expression. Lionel, a representative of the Duke of Valdre, had come to the banquet on behalf of Theseus, who couldn't attend due to work. Took a step back, looking at Lionel's face. Lennox, however, seemed undeterred by Lionel's intimidating presence. He stood up straight, puffing out his chest and making a sour face. Diane frowned, aware of the danger of engaging in a confrontation with Lionel Valdre in such a setting. She tried to stop her brother, but Lennox's mouth was faster than his brain and he seemed determined to stand his ground. The Duke of Despoin, meanwhile, turned his head with a small, dry cough, clearly uncomfortable with the tension between Lennox and Lionel. "Did I say something I wasn't supposed to say?" he scoffed. "Perhaps you have forgotten why this banquet was held," Lionel replied. Lennox's eyes bore into Lionel's back as he strode past, his mind reeling with anger. Diane's attempts to calm him went unnoticed as he inhaled deeply, preparing to confront Lionel. As their attention shifted back to the entrance, suddenly, a servant shouted out in excitement, "Her Majesty, she has arrived." All eyes turned towards the entrance, where the Empress stood, her commanding presence immediately drawing the attention of everyone in the hall. The guests stood up to bow and curtsy as she entered, and the banquet hall was filled with a new energy as everyone eagerly awaited her arrival. The Empress was petite and slender, but her presence commanded the attention of the room. The nobles who saw Adele Ulrich Aimant were struck by her intensity, her golden eyes sparkling like stars in the night sky, and her pale face glowing like moonlight, and even Lionel couldn't take his eyes off her as she passed by. Everyone held their breath as Adele, holding everyone's hearts in her hand, softly smiled and spoke. "I apologize for running a little late." Diane took a deep breath as the Empress ascended the Emperor's stairs, a forbidden path for anyone else, with a regal grace that seemed almost effortless. The nobles around her held their breath, their eyes fixed on the Empress as she made her way to the throne. As the Empress scanned the crowd with her piercing golden eyes, her every move calculated and deliberate, the banquet hall was filled with a sense of unease. The guests seemed to shrink under her gaze, their words caught in their throats as they struggled to maintain their composure. The Empress's power and authority were undeniable as she surveyed her subjects like a queen surveying her kingdom. "How are you, Lord Despoin? Are you enjoying your meal?" The Empress's voice cut through the tension as she turned her gaze to Lord Despoin, who sat next to Diane Poitiers. "Your Majesty, what brings you here?" "Nonetheless, I was expecting you," Lord Despoin replied, trying to hide his unease. As the crowd began to stir, a familiar face emerged from the throng. Lionel, a vassal noble of the Balder family, stepped forward to greet the Empress. He looked up at her, his eyes scanning her form as she exchanged greetings with the other nobles. Diane watched with a blank stare as the nobles scrambled to greet the Empress. People who had been chatting and seeking friendship quickly changed to people who wanted to greet the Empress, creating a rare scene. But Adele's gaze passed over Diane, as if she was unremarkable, just like the attendants and maids who passed by. Diane felt a sense of contempt rise within her, as if the Empress had no interest in her. Clenching her fists, Diane ignored the long line of nobles and went straight to the podium. She didn't care about protocol, she just wanted the Empress to notice her. "Fine. If you don't want to see me properly, I'll make you," she muttered under her breath. unfold with a hint of amusement on her face as Diane approached her. The noble's eyes shone with interest as the two women faced each other across the grand staircase. "Look at how favored she is by His Majesty," one noblewoman said. "I wonder how the Empress will react to this," a man said, his voice tinged with curiosity. Mistress cuts the line of nobles who wants to greet Empress. "Good day, Her Majesty the Empress. My name is Diane Poitiers." Mistress introduced herself with a respectful bow. Adele smiled sweetly. "Mistress, I worked on the wedding and this banquet. Do you like it?" Her question was bold, but she couldn't help but want to know how the Empress felt about having the Emperor's mistress at the banquet. "You've been through a lot. I apologize for not being able to wear the banquet gown you had prepared. I wanted to wear it since it was lovely, but it was too small. I just couldn't put it on." The nobles started whispering that I look at it. "She is wearing her wedding dress. I didn't notice it since it doesn't stand out. Wait, the dress prepared by Lady Poitiers was too small. Don't tell me she intentionally." Suddenly, there was a commotion at the entrance of the hall. "His Majesty has arrived." The Emperor, who had not shown his face until now, stood there with a stern expression, his presence commanding the attention of all in the room. The Empress was seated on the throne, her demeanor calm and collected, giving off the impression that she naturally held power and control, and would not be swayed by the slightest disturbance. Meanwhile, Diane's entire body relaxed as she saw Karl. He was her only hope, her only source of light. Tears formed in her eyes unintentionally. The Emperor frowned as he stopped in front of her and her gentle eyes filled with tears. He then looked back and forth between the Empress and Diane, his expression unreadable, but Adele knew what he was thinking. "Are you crying?" The Emperor's voice was low and deep, a hint of concern in his tone as he blocked Diane's path, shielding her from the Empress's gaze. "What are you doing?" the Emperor asked, his tone sharp. "That's what I'd like to know," Adele replied, trying to compose herself. "I was just trying to greet her." "What kind of greeting made you cry this way?" Karl asked, frowning at Diane's tears. "I'm curious as to why she's crying as well." She approached me and smiled. "Ask the young lady if you're curious about why she wanted to say hi," Adele replied, her voice becoming sharper. Karl turned to face Diane after hearing Adele's comments. Her face was marred by tears and fear. "I just wanted to greet Her Majesty the Empress," Diane said, trying to explain her actions, her voice trembling. Then turned his gaze to the Empress. Adele felt like she could strangle the man with her eyes. The two locked eyes in a heated exchange as the nobility watched on. "Forget it," he said, his gaze fixed on Diane, who was sadly watching from a corner of the hall. "That lady is my lover. Remember that." The Empress responded with a cold expression, her words sharp and biting. "Since you lack warmth, I will not pay attention to your lover either. Understand?" Adele smirked, finding a twisted sense of pleasure in the situation. "I met her twice, but both times she was the one who approached me." As the Emperor turned away without a word, Adele couldn't help but feel a sense of victory wash over her. She smiled brightly at the nobles, relishing in their attention and the Emperor's discomfort. As she chuckled, a small stir ran through the nobility. "She seems to be keeping her cool," one whispered. Lionel nodded slowly, but his mind was elsewhere. It seemed that rather than maintaining her composure, the Empress was trying hard not to lose. He couldn't help but notice that the smile on the Empress's face seemed forced, of someone in power, rather than the carefree smile on her lips when she rode a horse. Adele stormed into her palace, dismissing all of her attendants. She took deep breaths, trying to calm the anger and frustration that filled her chest. The Empress's black hair seemed to dance in the air, frustration that filled her chest, but it was no use. Her eyes shone with determination and her hands clenched tightly in response to the tingling in her peripheral nerves. The Empress's black hair seemed to dance in the air as the room was filled with a shifting of air currents, causing the candles to flicker and the windows to shake. She poured herself a glass of golden liquor and downed it in one swift gulp, feeling the burn in her throat as the alcohol hit her bloodstream. Well, I get why Diana Poitiers behaved that way. However, what's the deal with Karl Ulrich? If he loves her so much that he can't live without her, he should have just proclaimed her as the Empress. Why did he act like that after dragging innocent people into this? Do they think they are star-crossed? You'll appoint Diane Poitiers as Empress when I die. Is this some kind of tragic romance or a fantasy? Also, what? He acknowledge my lover too? She recalled her father's words. You should always act like you have it all. Don't act humble even when you have nothing at all. When you really have nothing, people never fail to find out. An empress acknowledged by has nothing but her title. The moment this fact is brought to light, everyone will rush to rip me apart, right? Think of a way. Adelaide, you have to think of a way. She queried her ladies-in-waiting about the inner workings of the palace and was not surprised to learn that Diane Poitiers, the emperor's favorite, was currently serving as the acting temporary manager. Who was the previous general manager? Adele asked. Countess Hannah Giggs, came the swift response. She instructed her ladies-in-waiting to call Countess Giggs and request a meeting with her. The servants looked at her with apprehension, knowing that Diane Poitiers was responsible for dismissing Hannah Giggs from her position. But Adele was not deterred, her determination and urgency clear in her tone. Bring the Imperial Palace law book up to date, she ordered. The current emperor decided to give all the palace's management authorities to Diana Poitiers instead of the Empress. It's fortunate that at least the Empress' inherent power is bestowed upon appointment. Maid, Your Majesty, you have a visitor waiting for you. It's my first time seeing you since the wedding, Your Majesty. When the guest welcomed her with a unique tone, Adele smiled back. Elizabeth Ulrich Grand was an unexpected visitor. Please take a seat, Adele said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Yes, Your Majesty. As the two women sat facing each other, the ladies-in-waiting offered them refreshments. Could you give us a moment of privacy? Adele asked the ladies-in-waiting. Of course, Your Majesty, they replied, bowing and leaving the room. Elizabeth watched the steam rise from the hot teacup and then focused on Adele's shining golden eyes. She looks smaller than I thought, however, despite that, I didn't think of her as weak. Not once. She's the kind of person who makes her opponent feel pressured just by her existence. Is there something on my face? Adele asked. I apologize, Your Majesty. I was simply mesmerized by the beauty of your eyes. Please forgive my staring, Elizabeth replied, feeling embarrassed for staring too long. I'm very fond of you, Your Majesty. I heard that you called Countess Hannah Giggs to the palace. She used to be my nursemaid. Adele asked, I ask why you're telling me this. Calling her to the palace means, you want to strengthen your position in the palace, right? Isn't that natural of an empress? Adele replied, you're right. Duchess inform Adele, it is. That being said, it surely won't be easy to do, since Diana Poitiers has the emperor's affection on her, and the power of Duke d'Avenel, the emperor's uncle, behind her. Everyone in the palace right now is on their side. Adele asked, let me just ask this question. What benefits do you offer me for solidifying my position in the imperial palace, as empress? She just went straight to the point. Then I won't need to talk in circles. The emperor is caught between the two of them and is not following the correct path. That's why I hope the empress will cut the connection between Diane Poitiers and Duc d'Espoin. That's why I desperately hope for Your Majesty to sever the link between them and the emperor. Adele, by solidifying my position as empress in the imperial palace? That's correct. Bringing in Countess Hannah Giggs would certainly be beneficial. I think it would be sufficient to keep her by his side and seek her guidance. And if I may give you a suggestion, please release a notice to look for an aide. Adele gets confused. An aide? The Imperial Palace General Manager is responsible for managing the internal affairs of the royal palace. It is mostly women. Duchess said. The Empress's assistants, on the other hand, are mostly men. When my father, the former emperor, changed his mistress, my mother-in-law proudly increased the number of assistants. Adele burst out laughing. So, if the emperor has a concubine, I should have assistants, right? I wasn't saying that you should have a revenge appear. A fighting spirit is essential in each mont. If you do nothing after being humiliated in front of everyone, they'll think that the Empress is no better than the mistress. So you should never lose your fighting spirit. And, although it is unlikely, if Balder's family sends a candidate, I recommend selecting him without hesitation. Prince Balder? The Grand Duchess nodded slowly in response to Adele's question. If you need any help from me, please don't hesitate to contact me. We can easily reach you through Countess Hannah Giggs, Your Majesty. Hannah Giggs had long been a powerful figure in the imperial court, having gained her position as the Grand Duchess's nanny and godmother due to her connection with the previous Empress. But her life was turned upside down when an unexpected character appeared, Diane Poitiers. Mrs. Giggs, like a lily in a vase, was stunned the moment she saw Diane. She was the opposite of the former Empress, who was the cause of the illness that killed her. Diane Poitiers had an atmosphere that was eerily similar to Karl Ulrich's birth mother. The Emperor quickly fell in love with her and one day withdrew all authority from Mrs. Giggs. Diane Poitiers played the role of the Emperor. Diane's first command was to expel Mrs. Giggs from the palace. The Duke of Grand personally disputed this decision, but Emperor Charles did not overturn Diane's decree, revealing his intentions. Hannah Giggs was forced to leave the palace in this manner, without even a retirement ceremony. The cry of the newly crowned Empress made the old lady, who had resigned in disgrace, feel like her heart was going to burst. Please come in. Thank you for granting my request. I am delighted, Your Majesty. Mrs. Giggs was respectful to the Empress. Keep your head held high. I apologize, Your Majesty. It's been a long time since I've been here, so I'm moved. It must be the same as the former Empress used it, right? Mrs. Giggs asked, delicately sweeping the sofa. I chose this sofa as well. However, because they are quite old goods, Your Majesty, it seems that it is time to replace them. Adele replied, I want to entrust you to do those jobs, is it possible? Hannah said, as for me, I'd be grateful to do it. However, His Majesty won't take it favorably. Adele in playful manner. So, you're fine with it, right? As I said, it'd be my joy, Your Majesty. The maid who was waiting outside gently knocked on the door and entered to inform the Empress of something. Your Majesty, the dress I ordered recently has just arrived. What's the matter? That is, there. Don't be difficult, just say it clearly. The lady-in-waiting took a deep breath, as if determined, and then stated, the Imperial Palace Finance Office said they couldn't pay for Your Majesty's garment. The Empress was angry and asked, what? She was so enraged that she thought a nut might jump out of her throat. The Empress closed her eyes and remained quiet for a moment. Mrs. Giggs suggested that the Empress should handle the unpaid bill by paying it personally through the Empress Palace. She explained that if rumors of the unpaid bill were to spread, it could harm the Empress's reputation, and so it would be best to summon the person responsible to the palace to pay them and give them extra money in exchange for their silence. However, you won't need to meet them directly, Your Majesty. Please entrust the task to me. Adele sent her maid to go and call the dealers. Maid. Yes, Your Highness. Adele quickly went to her room and retrieved her emergency money when the lady-in-waiting rushed out of the drawing room in a panic. Adele took out a gold bar and placed it in her silk pouch, her fingers turning white from the weight of the purse. She muttered to herself, let's give it a try, her eyes brighter than gleaming gold. This manhwa ends here. If you want to hear a little spoiler then, please continue, otherwise you can skip. The male lead is none other than Lionel Blair, our handsome black hair prince. I totally love him. What about you? If you want us to continue the story, please write Prince Lionel. Till then, please like, comment, and subscribe for updates. Till then, bye, and stay safe.